institutionally and infrastructurally a lot of necessary things for really opening data in, and we do it. And what I hope these events are helping to advance our a bit more understanding of, so we have basics right. So where are we getting our what matters right? I mean, are we producing the data that is most valuable, most interesting? Are we making it, are we governing it with the highest quality so that this outdated data does not become disinformation rather than information, and so on? So I am very kind of proud and hopeful that these events give us more food for thought on advancing, not really thinking about what's simple things that we need to do first, but the really advanced things that we need to do next in order to get the biggest value and produce the value for society, for economy, on which I would say a lot of things depends in the democracy. And yeah, so this is my kind of so much of the speech on that this government very much understands the importance of all this endeavor. And yeah, I congratulate everyone and thanks for colleagues from Ireland of taking part in this as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was advisor to the Prime Minister of Republic of Lithuania, Rimantas Žylius. And also I would like to introduce Marijus Gudynas. He's ambassador of the Republic of Lithuania to the Republic of Ireland, and also just to give us a small welcome. So the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone from Dublin. I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces here. I don't know how should I address you, dear colleagues, dear Irish-Lithuanian friends. I'm really happy that this event is taking place. I am here in Ireland only for 2 years. 1 year we were all in lockdown, so we were locked from cooperation, from meeting each other, from talking one to another. But in the last year, I've really seen a lot of potential in building relations between our countries. We are so similar countries that it's difficult to imagine, you know, how that far one from another in terms of distance, living European two nations can be so alike, so similar. And I think this brings me to saying that there is a huge potential in learning one from another, be it in open data governance as today, or in attraction of investments, in which Ireland is really very, very good, and we are really eager to learn from you on how to do that more effectively, or in development assistance, where Ireland is also really by far most advanced, most probably state even in Europe. But also there are fields where Lithuania is really advanced, like cyber threats tackling, where we can share our experience, like fighting Russian propaganda and the disinformation with which we lived for hundreds of years, like the event we recently had where our national security institutions shared their knowledge on how they, first of all, inform the society about the threats to the national security, about how to elect directly mayors, which is ongoing discussion in Ireland, and actually we have this system for quite some time, and we have changed several ways of the system. So there are really a lot of fields, and those are just few that popped up to my mind Now, I mean, we can go into business, be it biotechnology, where Ireland is extremely strong, but also we are really advancing and quite advanced, and our businesses are working together, or IT, where I would say that we are more or less on equal terms, or lasers, where we are much better, or construction, where housing problem is one of the most pressing questions here in Ireland, and I believe Lithuania can offer a lot to share, or tourism, or even culture. Yesterday, I've met in my embassy a wonderful Irish artist, Aideen Berry, who made a film about my native city, Kaunas, and which is called Klostės, for Kaunas, capital of European culture event. So basically, there are really a lot of ways how we can work together, how we can cooperate. We have a very strong political cooperation. Our parliaments are working together. Our ministers are going to Ukraine together, and we are really doing a lot. But there is really much more than we can do together. So I just encourage all of you, wherever you work, just look in the ways how you can learn from Ireland, how you can share your experience with Ireland. And if you have any ideas, please call us, and we will be very happy to connect you to one or another end and to build this partnership, which I believe will grow into brotherhood. So that is my very short message.
Thank you very much. That was Marijus Gudinas, ambassador of the Republic of Lithuania to the Republic of Ireland. Indeed, learning from each other is a faster way to improve. Also, it's the best way to hear the best practices and maybe the biggest challenges. I would also like to inform you that this online conference is being recorded, so I hope you are okay with this thing. And also, I would like to continue by welcoming Mariana Cassidy. She's Ireland's Open Data Initiative leader in the EU. She will give us a small welcome speech and also a short presentation.
Thank you, Darius. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Great. I'm going to share a few slides, but while I'm trying to sort out the window, I wanted to echo what Marius just said. I'm delighted to be sharing our experience, our Irish experience of open data. And if anything, open data is all about sharing and learning from one another. So I'd like to extend what Marius said, the invitation to contact us. The team and colleagues in Ireland are going to give you a lot of information, and feel free to come back oh, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so just to start, the Open Data Initiative in Ireland was instigated in 2014 after Ireland signed up to the Open Government Partnership. It was very much born out of a requirement to meet our obligation under the current Public Service Information Directive. And the aim was to help rebuild trust, to stimulate new business application, and really the overall aim was about improving the life of citizens generally, as Rimantas mentioned earlier. Our first open data strategy spanned from 2017 to this year, 2022, so we're coming towards the end of it, and it had two main objectives. The first one was around publication about high-value government data in open formats, making it publicly available and freely reusable. So very much publication was the first aim. And the second objective was about engaging with a broad community of stakeholders to promote social and economic benefit of open data, very much making the case for open data. Can you see when I switch slide there? And
Yes.
some of you may be familiar with that slide. It's to show that open data has value in many different ways. It comes out from European studies. The team often use it to illustrate how the open data can change life. It shows how open data from local authorities around parking places availability through those little sensors under the cars can save money, significant amount of money, significant amount of energy, time, and ultimately lives in terms of preventing congestion and accidents. So it's a very, very real benefits. And in terms of open data in Ireland, as Darius mentioned initially, we've been very much at the cutting edge of open data. We've ranked second in the EU for open data maturity. And you'll hear from my colleague later how we invested, but it's really about how open data is used and integrated in decision-making process, and how there's a feedback loop to improve data itself. The Open Data Directive was transposed last year in July 21 in Ireland, and the first implementing act was passed only last week, and we are now working on the definition of the high value data set. Over 240,000 there are over 240,000 users of the Open Data Portal, and there's been in the last year 30% increase in data. We've done a lot of work around unified technical services, training support for public sector to be able to publish, to use the data, to understand what open data means for the day-to-day work. We run an annual conference on open data, and we have regular impact series. We also were involved in a EU project called Hail and Arty, and it was very much a prototype to showcase how open data, including citizens' data, can be used to inform the day-to-day decision in supporting citizens' well-being. And it's really central to the European Data Space Initiative to connect the data to make it very tangible and meaningful and usable. In terms of the data trends we see in Ireland, I'm sure it would be quite similar to what you're experiencing in Lithuania. There are trends, there are new data sources that were coming online. For example, the citizen data. For example, we get a lot of locally gathered wildlife sighting for protected species. We're also seeing that technological development is changing, is adding new sources of data. So I mentioned the parking sensors, we've the air quality sensors for the meteorological data. We're also getting increasing expectation to use data differently through emerging technologies such as AI and machine learning. And we are seeing new societal expectation for service delivery. People expect that people use their data effectively and securely on online services, and huge expectation in terms of digital transformation in line with our EU and national transformation programme. In Ireland, that include our government ID, Mass Post Box initiative, the Once Only principle, and some of the initiatives that Spark Dublin is going to speak to you about later. And in terms of, we have an increasing number of data-focused legislation, so quite a complex legislative framework with data-driven policies at EU and national level, Data Act, Data Governance Act, the GDPR, of course, Data Space Initiative, and all the policies that sit on top of the transformation agenda. So quite a complex legislative framework for data. But one thing is common and current is that it's all connected, and open data help us navigate this complex framework collaboratively. And I think Rimantas mentioned earlier about the common language, and it's very much the value that open data brings, that ability to share information and speak the same language. It helps us do better and show how we do better, which is, you know, when you're driving transformation program, it's really important to do well, but it's even more important to show that you're doing well if you want to keep on having the energy and the resources behind it. And while data collection is increasing exponentially, it doesn't mean that it's better or more usable data. And we're now going through our second strategy process, and it's very much more about data quality, relevance, accessibility of our open data, and about leveraging and unleashing the potential and the power that the open data gives. So in terms of our future, there are a number of key insights that we're working off. First is that data sharing and collaboration are not just for altruistic goals. They drive increase in efficiency and better quality data. The more eyes on your data, the more you're going to catch what you can do better. The second insight is that good data gives us good insight, which is critical for good government. Evidence-based decision-making is a key pillar of our reform and transformation objective. The third insight is good data is the foundation of citizen understanding and trust of government's decision. And I think both Marius and Rimantas touch on this. Openness is one of the drivers of trust. We participated in the OECD Trust Survey last year, and in fact, we came on top for trust in how public institutions manage their data. And we believe that at a time where disinformation, misinformation is one of the key challenges that we all facing as democracy, open data plays a critical role. And we were lucky of the investment of the team and the public servant here in grasping that open data's challenge quite early. Now, the fourth issue is that open good data fuels technology that enables service provision and economic development. Digital transformation can't happen without data to harness the emerging tech I mentioned earlier, but also good policy and good decision making can't happen without good shared data, because more and more the problem that our citizens, our people are facing are complex, cross-cutting problem, and we need to understand them holistically to be able to tackle them in a better way. And finally, something that's close to the heart of my team and Rhoda and Elena particularly, good location data is critical, because that makes it much more real, much more relatable, and much more actionable when we know where it is. And the last slide really is to illustrate that open data is all around us. And the most valuable part of what the Open Data Unit does is encouraging the release and the reuse of data, for example, through impact series events. And some of our best examples have been developed or discovered through the Engagement Fund. It has proved a valuable outreach tool and creates engagement with the data published on data.gov.ie. So that's something that has worked really well in creating a fund to really stimulate the use of open data and to showcase it. It's been a rich source of example that fed into the European Open Data Maturity Assessment and the Open Data Survey, and that explained that we've ranked so well. So you will see some of the example from the team this afternoon. And again, if you want to reach out after to and see any scope for collaboration, we're very open and welcoming of this. So thank you very much, Darius.
Thank you very much for your short presentation. That was Marianne Cassidy, Ireland Open Data Initiative, a leader in the EU, was her presentation. She's Assistant Secretary with responsibility for public service transformation in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform Government on Ireland. And now we will continue with second presentation from Lithuania about lack of trust, or maybe the fear of technologies. Where the hand brake on, opening the data is on. The presentation will be given by Erika Kurochkina. She's advisor to the Minister of the Ministry of Economy and Innovation of the Republic of Lithuania. So, dear Kurochkina, the floor is yours, or should I say screen?
Thank you, Darius. Good afternoon, everybody. It's really a pleasure to speak about open data. It's definitely my favorite topic in this government. I will try to be fast, and sorry if I won't be fast, but I really would like to share our experience. Okay. Yeah, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, that's great. So probably it is right to begin where we stand at the moment and where we were a year ago. As you know, the European Data Portal annually assesses the open data policies of European countries and their practical implementation. The European Portal study divides member states into 4 groups according to the evolution of data opening progress. According to the Open Data Maturity Report, Lithuania in 2021 was a fast tracker, together with Austria, Italy, Slovenia, Denmark, Norway, Germany, Netherlands, and Cyprus in the field of open data, and was ranked 14th among 34 countries. Of course, our goal is to be among trendsetters. It's natural, as digital policy and digital innovation in Lithuania is among the priorities. So today's meeting with our colleagues from Ireland as a trendsetter is crucial to learn some lessons in order to fill the gaps here in Lithuania. Open Data Maturity Report for 2022 with new open data trends and updated rating will be announced soon in the middle of December. So we are really looking forward, as since 2021, some great changes have been done. So what is the state of play at the moment in Lithuania? In my opinion, our open data ecosystem stands on 5 main pillars. First of all, policy level, a supportive set of strategic decisions, legislation, standards, methodological frameworks. Transposing Open Data Directive in 2021 international legislation system formed the legal basis for an additional methodological documents which clarified the process of opening the data. Besides, served as an impetus to build a stronger open data community among governmental institutions. Also, what is crucial, despite the fact that open data is a principle which is among national policy priorities, it became legally inevitable. Secondly, Open Data Portal, which provides tools and solutions for open data providers and users. It is a one-stop shop for the raw data and a platform for the communication between data collectors or public bodies and the market, businesses, academia, non-governmental institutions. Third, Open Data Team and community inside the governmental bodies, in other words, people, is another important pillar, which consists of dedicated experts from public institutions, data providers, and developers. Policy making and implementation, technical support, open data coordinators are the driving force for the open data topic in bureaucratic corridors. It is a must to feel a personal responsibility to work with data and, of course, functional inevitability to enable processes to open the data. Next pillar, which in my opinion should be singled out, is data agency. From 2023, the Lithuanian Department of Statistics becomes the state data agency and takes on 2 different roles in the state. The producer of official statistics, as it is right now, and the steward of state data. In other words, the services of the state data agency will be expanded towards the creation of single and internal state data management system for decision makers. Also, it will provide centralized tool for opening of public sector data, environment for health data reuse, environment for data analysis for public institutions. In addition, the agency will provide to other state institutions the resources of data platform to build their own data sandboxes. And the last, and definitely not the least, pillar is the non-governmental users of data, businesses and academia, those who use data for the creation of new products, for the research, for the new products and for the research. Those whose opinion is crucial for us in shaping policy, for us who is working with the quality of data, for us who is working in shaping technical decisions and making public investments. So this is how our ecosystem looks like. Also shortly, I would like to show the model of opening the data, which is right now in Lithuania. Under our model, all institutions are obliged to inventory their data in order to identify what data is created by the state. In other words, what menu state is offering. That menu is served in Open Data Portal. Next principle, after showing a menu, opening the data by demand, by registering on the Lithuanian Open Data Portal the demand for the raw data sets. After that, the process of opening the data starts. All communication between institutions is publicly visible, and users can see and answer when data will be open or why data can't be open. The role of Open Data Portal is very significant. It works, as I mentioned before, as one-stop shop for data users as well as for institutions that provide open data to it. Under the model, all public bodies are obliged to appoint a person responsible for organizing the opening of the authority's data, the data opening coordinator. The coordinators must ensure that the process of opening data is carried out under the legal requirements. Information Society Development Committee maintains and develops the Lithuanian Open Data Portal, as well as provides institutions with methodological and technological support in inventorying and opening data. The role of data users is also very important, as by requesting open data they need, they enable institutions to open most valuable data. But of course, all the processes have their own specific issues, I would say. In our case, probably it is GDPR. We should admit that some institutions still struggle in opening data, fearing to open the personal data and thus violate the requirements of GDPR. Data privacy is still a fairly new field. But today, data privacy is a common topic for everyday consumers, businesses, as well as public authorities. So there is always a but, and there is always a way out. So in case of opening the state data, we have a decision. We have Statistics Lithuania or data agency, which will provide necessary technical tools for data anonymization. It is the process of protecting private or sensitive information by erasing or encrypting identifiers that connect an individual to stored data. This is possible only ensuring that projects are developed by teams that have the highest understanding of the latest privacy technologies and regulations worldwide. And here we have a solution in the face of data agency, a tool to assist institutions in data anonymization. According to the new model for opening data, all data sets of institutions are processed and opened centrally through the State Data Management Information System managed by Statistics Lithuania. This way, a centralized data opening scheme is established in order to speed up the data opening process and ensure standard anonymization and quality of data. So Lithuania is prepared technically. That's not a problem anymore. But what we see, we have some suspicions or fear that technological decisions won't meet GDPR requirements. We do believe that there is a way out in building trust and, of course, in creation of flexible and progressive legal personal data protection bases. What we see more, lack of institutional knowledge among the personal data protection bodies. So in my opinion, near the political and technical support, we have to build understanding among the regulators why we need open data. In the first half of this year, a large amount of useful data on pension savings, healthcare licenses, personal income, and taxes was open to the public. The number of data sets opened on portal has increased by a quarter, and interest in them has almost doubled. The most popular categories in terms of frequency of downloads are social security, economic activities, and businesses and education. The data sets have been downloaded almost 42,000 times for social security, almost 35,000 times for economic activity and businesses, and more than 19,000 times for education. That's pretty impressive for the public sector. Also, it shows a growing need for open data. Our goal is to further activate the data opening process itself and to open at least 500 data sets, including high-value data, which can become the basis for new products and technologies. Therefore, we look forward to smooth cooperation in this process on the part of all public sector bodies, of course. Well, Open Data Portal uses Google Analytics that allows to track number of unique visitors, data downloads, popular data sets, also institutions that are actively opening data sets, most requested data sets, and etc. All this allows us to make right decisions to ensure smooth data opening process. Well, over the last year, the Open Data team put a lot of efforts to build a network of people who work with open data, such as experts from public sector institutions, municipalities, also data enthusiasts. Special attention is paid to data coordinators who are responsible for open data governance in the particular institution. Open Data Club for data coordinators was recently established to ensure dissemination of information as well as sharing of good practices. The Lithuanian Open Data team closely communicates with the open data community using chat groups, organizing seminars and workshops, also public events and hackathons where public institutions and startups and businesses can meet, discuss ideas, solutions, data demand, and etc. We believe that there is still room for more initiatives, so we are looking forward to involve in the process members from private sector and academia. Also, we continue to educate society about open data because their input in requesting needed data, giving feedback to published data sets, and sharing solutions where open data were used is extremely important. Data is not a luxury, but a necessity today. It is both a sign of the maturity of the state and a tangible benefit for businesses and people. By opening up more and more data, as well as making our open data portal more user-friendly, we have every chance to grow and become one of Europe's leaders. And you know, when I'm thinking about open data, probably we have to think about that the biggest fear or every problem is an opportunity. I like to give a very simple historical example. 19th century London, a terrible outbreak of cholera. Dr. John Snow found a link between drinking water and cholera infections by combining data on cholera deaths with data on water well locations. All this laid the foundation for the emergence of the London sewerage system. What does this mean? An innovative urban planning solution, correspondingly improving public health, and etc. At that time, there was no fear of GDPR. Also, at that time, there was no smart technologies to anonymize personal data. But what we can learn that smart use of personal data is an opportunity and a condition for the progress. So thank you for your attention, and I will turn off my computer and presentation. So thank you for your attention, and feel free to contact me if you will have any questions. And I would like to apologize because I have an unplanned meeting and I will have to leave you. So have a good day, and thank you very much, Darius and the government of the Republic of Lithuania.
Thank you very much. We heard a presentation from Erika Kurachkina. She's advisor to the minister at the Ministry of Economy and Innovation. And now we'll continue with the third presentation. And I would like to welcome Rhoda Kerins. Presentation will be on the topic of open government data in Ireland, of course, and he's head of Ireland's Open Data Unit. So Mr. Kerins, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, good. Thank you, and good afternoon to all our open data colleagues in Lithuania. And I hope this afternoon to give you some insights and share the experience of Ireland's Open Data Initiative and how that was developed. So we've seen this graph before, the Lithuanian version of it, and so we can see that Ireland really began our open data journey in 2014. And you can see in 2015 we were placed in 20th position. And over the next number of years, we grew to be a leader in Ireland and we are in Europe, and we have remained as a leader in Europe over the last number of years. So how did we achieve this success, and how did we really go from a standstill position in 2014 to first in Europe 3 years later? And really what I call this is our, if you like, the circle of success. So our first action was to consult, and that was to consult with businesses, with academia, with the public sector and with the general public to understand really what was required and how best to approach it. And we follow this up by putting in place strong governance structures, putting in our Open Data Governance Board, developing our portal and the standards for the publication of data to the portal. We have engaged in strong outreach and engagement with our reusers to understand how the data is being used, and obviously to encourage the reuse of that data. So the Open Data Governance Board was established in 2015, and the board leads the Open Data Initiative and drives the implementation of our Open Data Strategy. And the Open Data Unit in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform has the practical responsibility for the implementing of the strategy and oversees the implementation and the operation of our open data portal, data.gov.ie. And supporting the Open Data Unit is the advisory group, and this is a group of experts drawn from the public service, and they are also open data evangelists who provide technical support and advice to the Open Data Unit and ensure a coherent and consistent approach to the publication of data across the public sector. Our strategy, of course, is the cornerstone of our Open Data Initiative, and this was adopted as government policy, so it applies to all public bodies. And it has two core objectives: the publication of high-value government data in open formats, and engagement with the broad community of stakeholders to promote social and economic benefits of open data. And you can see this list of actions which apply to public bodies. And the last of those, so it's the publication of data, auditing your data, publication of data, and ensuring the data is geocoded, and the appointment then of open data liaison officers. So the liaison officers are appointed as the contact for open data in any given organisation, and they promote not only the publication of data across the organisation, but also they are the interaction with that organisation with their reusers, and they also have to report on the progress of their organisation against the open data strategy to the open data unit in our department. And the open data strategy doesn't sit on its own. It's not something that happens in isolation. It obviously is aligned with government policies and initiatives in relation to data. So I will skip on. Our initiative is really underpinned by 3 pillars. I see you had 5 pillars, but I call these our 3 pillars for open data. We, as I mentioned, our open data strategy, but our portal is obviously central to that. And currently there are over 14,500 data sets on the portal from over 150 public bodies. And of course, the data is free to use and reuse and is mainly provided under CC BY 4.0 license. We have our publication guidelines, which sets out the key components and standards for publishing data in Ireland. So the license, the formats, etc., and the schemas for data. And we use the DCAT AP2 as our standard for metadata publication. Oops. Okay. One of the areas on our portal which demonstrates the good reuse of data is our showcases tab, and I encourage you to access that and have a look at some of the showcases there. This is just the beaches. Ireland, of course, in Ireland is an island, and we have lots of lovely beaches. We may not always get the weather, but we do have excellent beaches. So a large part of what we do is engagement and outreach. And we undertook the Hale and Hearty Action. It's an EU-funded project. And again, this was engage citizens in actual data, because it can be very hard for citizens when they access a portal to understand what is the benefit to them and to interpret the data that is presented. And the Hale and Hearty project was an action we took to give people access to local information on health and activity-related activities through an interactive interface. And again, you can check that out on data.gov.ie. Marianne mentioned our impact series events, and these bring people from business, from academia, and the general public, and the publishers of data, so the public sector organisations, together to discuss a particular topic of data. This is from our arts, culture and heritage, and it allows people to come together and cross-pollinate ideas, the publishers to understand how their data is being used and how small improvements can improve that data, and it gives the reusers direct access to the publishers of the data. We also have an engagement fund which it provides kind of seed funding, if you like, to innovative projects in the open data area. So just to finish, again, in Erika's presentation, the engagement with and consultation with the reusers of the data is key, again, to our new strategy. We're just beginning the process of drafting our open data strategy for 2027. And we began this with a consultation, a series of consultations, which we called our open data town halls. And these brought, again, general public and the reusers of data together to help us understand the impact of our first open data strategy, to gather feedback and to understand the requirements for our next open data strategy. And really what we've gathered from that so far is that what people want is quality data, they want consistent data, and they want reliable data. And they also, another key element that came up from that was understanding who has access to the data, who controls the data, and how that impacts on GDPR and personal data. But I will leave it there, as I believe my time is up. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them later in the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was Rhoda Kerrins, head of Ireland's Open Data Unit. So as it was mentioned, we will have some time for questions and answers after two more presentations. So stay with us. And now I'd like to invite Declan Smith to talk about CCO and open data. Declan Smith, a senior statistician in the Statistical System Coordination Directorate of the Central Statistics Office. So the stage is yours.
Thank you, Darius. I'll just get my slides now. Now, can you see that okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So as Darius said, my name is Declan Smith. I'm a senior statistician with the Central Statistics Office of Ireland. So we are the National Statistical Institute in Ireland. And I just want to spend the next couple of minutes just giving you a show through or talk through of how we make open data accessible to the public and to other government departments. So first of all, just to quickly touch on what is open data. Well, it is data that is freely used, that can be reused and redistributed by anyone. It's subject to requirements like that there's attributes associated with it. Any of the open data that the Central Statistics Office makes available, say for instance in a CSV format, will include attribute data about the source of the data, maybe additional notes and the classification of the data. Is it official statistics or not? As well, it's required that it's shared alike so that anyone that uses the data also ensure that they make the data available to others as well subsequently. I suppose another important requirement as well, particularly for the Central Statistics Office, is that any data that we make available openly like this is anonymized, that an individual unit cannot be identified, be it a person or an enterprise. And that's something that we would take very seriously, because the Central Statistics Office's legislation that it's based on is the Statistics Act 1993. When I joined the office, I signed up as an Officer of Statistics, and one of my responsibilities is to ensure that any data that we disseminate would not breach statistical disclosure controls. So, for example, if you were producing a tabulation that might be cross-referencing two or more variables in relation to the accounts of an individual, or individuals rather, you would potentially ensure that no cell would have a value of less than 5 in it. And if you did determine that a cell had a count of less than 5, you would suppress it, and the next lowest cell in its column or row as well, to make sure that it couldn't be back engineered by taking away the remaining cells from the total for that lower cell. In the Central Statistics Office, we do try to always strive towards providing effectively like a 5-star service with regards open data. So this is just a kind of a breakdown, I suppose, of 1 to 5-star level of data or service that could be provided. To get a 1-star, we're saying that you would just make data available on your website. That could be just in a PDF or something like that. The data has been made publicly available, but it's not very user-friendly. People can't download it readily and incorporate it, embed it into their own websites, and as well, it wouldn't be in a machine-readable format. To, I suppose, improving the level of service would be to make the data available in a structured format. So, for example, giving it out in an Excel format as opposed to a scanned image. To get a kind of a 3-star status, it would be to provide the same data in a non-proprietary format. So providing it in CSV instead of Excel. Excel, you may need to have a license, which would require money, whereas CSV is an open sourced format where you could make the data available, and others could easily, with machine reading technology, be able to download it and analyze it. As well, the use of URLs to help identify where the data came from. So any of the files that we would make available for download would include URLs in it, and a URL is effectively a link or file path back to the source of the data. And then to get the 5-star, which is what we always striving to do in the Central Statistics Office, is to link your open data to other people's open data to provide more context. So an example of that would be where you have a data available as open data, but with that too, you have linked it to maybe a geographical layer, that information that's also available open sourced, so that the user could download the data that they want in the tabulation form, but maybe as well to also download the information in a map format with a breakdown of geographical areas with the data associated with each geographical area available. So with being a national statistical institute as well, we have to comply with European Statistical Code of Practice. Now there's 15 principles in all, 16 if you include principle 1, that's kind of split. But there's 2 principles of this European Statistical Code of Practice that are very relevant as well to open data, and that's principle 14 and 15. Principle 14 is coherence and comparability, and again this is something that we take very seriously and put to the forefront of what we do in the Central Statistics Office, and that's that data that we make available in an open data format is consistent over time in its methodology, but it's also comparable as well. And to make data comparable, you have to have standard classifications and standards. So if we can do that across Europe, it then means that open source data that's referring to the same subject matter can be easily and quickly compared between one country and another country, or even between regions within a country. And that adds huge value to the data. And then the other principle, 15, accessibility and clarity, is that the data should be presented in a clear and understandable format. So if there's need for metadata, it should have the metadata, things on the, maybe a description of the definition of the underlying data in the table, and that it's released in a suitable and convenient manner, and that it is available to all on an impartial basis, with that supporting metadata and indeed the guidance as well for the user to give them instructions on how to download the information. So in the Central Statistics Office, we have our own open data as well, our own open data portal that we call PXStat. So that's our data dissemination management system. It's powered by a lightweight engine and provides a modern way, an efficient way of managing and disseminating our statistics through a web interface and web services API. So it means then that this facilitates end users to be able to run extensive metadata searches. So even if they weren't aware of the exact table, if they were aware of the subject matter, they could do a search based on it. It allows the user to filter results and effectively to slice and dice the data, that they can export the data, filter what variables that they might want, or what values they might want under a given classification, and pivot tables and things like that. And the outputs that we facilitate would be in formats like JSON and CSV and XLSX as well. So there's numerous different formats that the user can use. Just go back one there. So if you, sorry, I'm just trying to get back. Yeah, so if you go into the PXStat on the Central Statistics Office website, you'd be brought into this page here, and you can see down the left-hand side the the categories, the range of data that's available. Now that's at a very aggregated level. Most of those categories, when you go into it, will have subcategories. And it's also as well, there's only a list there of just over half a dozen. That's actually masking the fact that we have over 8,000 tables available in open data format on our website. And while it is predominantly data that the Central Statistics Office acquires and produces itself, there is also 300 tables been hosted on behalf of other public service bodies as well, and both these numbers are increasing over time. But then in the middle of the screen, you can see a list of some of the tables that are available, and it's just a case then of selecting one of those tables and then going in and selecting the characteristics that you'd like to view in an open data format. So to give an example of that, I went in and looked at the census time series. In Ireland, we run a traditional census. This has been reviewed and we'll be moving towards internet now, but for a very, very long time, we've been doing it on a traditional basis whereby a enumerator calls to our house before census night, hands a form in and advises the household that they'll be back to collect the form after census night. So this time series goes all the way back to 1841. We have a census every 5 years. And in this particular table, when I clicked on it, these were the variables that was made available to me to pick from. So I picked the population count. I selected here for the years. I'd have a look at all the census values for the population counts back to 1841. I selected the total birth as well for the country, and then I selected all the counties in the Republic of Ireland to have a look at all those. When I did all that and selected it, and I could, like I say, chop and change that as I see fit. When I did that, I got this table, which gives you the breakdown of what the population was back in 1841 and then up to more recent times, all the way over. Now, in this format, the data is kind of straddled across 3 pages, but if I take the option of downloading in the CSV, it'll all just be in one table, and included in that is the metadata I mentioned earlier and a URL link back to the source of the information too. So once I had generated that, I could save that query, and that query then would be sitting in the PXStat portal, so that the next time I want to come in, I could just click on the query and it would produce this table, and I don't have to go back through selecting all the individual variables and the filters and whatnot. In addition to that, we also have visualization functionality in the PXStat, and in this case, based on the same open data that was available for this time series on census results, I generated a graph to show what the population was like over time from 1841 right up to present. And in that too, I just thought it'd be of interest to see how, as well as looking at the state over that time, what did the population look like in County Dublin, where the capital of Ireland is located. And again, this was the product, the visualization that I got. And again, I can save this query so that the next time I go in, I can just click on the query and it'll just appear. And I had set one of the features to fluid, so that when the 2022 census results become available, which are currently been processed, that when I click on this query, it would automatically update it with the most recent data as well. For this presentation too, I asked my colleagues as well if they could pull out some data on, I suppose, the volume of hits that the PXStat portal was getting in the Central Statistics Office. So I have a range from the 1st of January this year up to about last week, and you can see over the course of time the line going across the graph has been relatively consistent. Now, it's made up of a couple of different components. You might be able to see them too well there, the way that they're labeled, but they're called bots, M2M, widgets, and users, and I'll come back to that in a moment and describe each of those. But what was interesting was when we looked at this over time with the PXStat system that we had, that there was a peak in hits on the 3rd of November, or sorry, the 3rd of November. So we tried to drill into that a little bit more, and we looked at I think I just jumped a table there. Sorry, I just jumped a table. Let me just go back. we drilled into the tables that were hit on the 3rd of November, and what we found was 3 tables in particular that were driving the hits were tables on climate. I can't be absolutely sure, but I don't think it was a coincidence that between the 6th of September and the 20th of September was the 2022 UN Climate Change Conference in Egypt, the COP27. So it looked like that people were accessing the open data that we had on the climate leading up to that event. And you can see here that while that's the total number of tables, or total number of hits per table, it's broken down by these bots, M2M, widgets, and users. So just to briefly explain, these users is a count of people that have literally just gone in, kind of what I just demonstrated, and manually pulled down the information that they would like to see. The widgets is where it's a similar process, but after you've done that, there is a code segment that someone can extract from our PX stat. Now that code segment can then be embedded into another website, and it could effectively be it's effectively like a recording of the query. What happens is then when anyone goes into this other website, every time they go into it, the widget activates the code segment and pulls the data from our website to produce the table that, you know, that the tables like I was showing you, or the graphs like I was showing you, or even maps like I was that we have available as well. The M2M, again, that's when someone might have gone into a website, they can, rather than extracting code segments, they kind of download effectively like a JSON code, basic code. It's code that tells the user where values are in a table or where the table can be found. And what we're seeing, this is increasing more and more. It's where, you know, developers would kind of use the directions to the data, they'd bring it back, they'd incorporate it into their own programs, and effectively, rather than build off the widgets that we would have available through the code segments, they are building their own widgets themselves using the source code that they can get from the PX stat. So this would be where they'd be generating the tables from another computer, but again, the directions were sourced from our own PX stat portal. And then we have what we call bots, which is automated programs, which someone described to me quite sinisterly as programs that are crawling the web, looking to see what people are hitting on. So if a bot sees that people are hitting an open source table on PX stat, they'll make note of that, and then they'll go off to try and see, can they find other related data like that, so that the next person that might do a search for that particular topic will have a list of records that they can access and go through and see which one's the most relevant to them. So we'd have bots like that coming in and having a look at the open data that we have available. So while that was showing what was the hits on the 3rd of September, if we step back and just look at what was the general theme of hits over the course of time from the 1st of January this year to last week, what we see the table's been hit the most are products that the Central Statistics Office produce on girls' names and on boys' names. These are products that are incredibly popular with the public in Ireland, and it's effectively, it's just a count of babies' names where there's a count of more than 3 occurrences of that name in a given time period, and it just generates so much interest, and it's coming through as well. We see it picked up in the media, but we can also see it in the statistics that we can get from our open data. Then we also have a lot of interest in birth dates from 1918, the occurrences of people's birthdays. But then you'll see the 3 tables again that came up quite highly on the 3rd of September on temperature, rainfall and sunshine. And then after that, you'd see themes that are obviously very topical at the moment, things in relation to consumer price index. And if I was to let that table have rolled on to a couple more rows, you would have seen hits on things like national average prices and house prices and macroeconomics as well. So again, it's a good way of getting a indication of, I suppose, the themes of the day, what people are interested in. So that brings me to the end of the presentation, and as the others have said before me, I'm happy to take any questions later on during the course of the discussion, or if anyone wants to reach out to me after today's discussion, they're more than welcome to as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. There was Declan Smith, Senior Statistician in the Statistical System Coordination Directorate of the Central Statistics Office. And now we'll continue with one more presentation, and afterwards we'll have some questions and answers. So now I would like to invite Alan Murphy to give us an overview of open data approach at Smart Dublin. Alan Murphy works Smart Dublin Regional Manager. So, dear Murphy, we are looking forward.
Okay, thanks, Darius. I'm just sharing my screen. Is that coming through okay?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting me along to give you a glimpse as to how we're approaching open data at Smart Dublin. So the slides I'll talk you through will cover these 4 main points. So I'll introduce you to Smart Dublin, who we are. I'll talk about our publication process. I'll talk about some projects that we do around the open data that we've published. And I'll talk to you about an innovation process that we've done over the last couple of years that we think has really engaged the market, and the market being academia, the general public, industry, etc. The diagram on the right-hand side there, the Lego diagram, is a nice way to summarize what we're trying to achieve in everything we do. And starting from the top, data exists within our organization. We're trying to sort it, we're trying to arrange it, we're trying to present it in a visually impactful way, similar to what Declan has presented in the previous presentation. Then going further, can the data be explained with a story? What insight can be derived from the data that we've published? And then, of course, data can be put to actionable or useful real-life use cases. So I'll repeat that diagram during my presentation, but it's a nice infographic to explain what we're doing at Smart Dublin. So who is Smart Dublin? So we are an initiative of the 4 Dublin councils. We're a local government collaboration. We engage with diverse stakeholders to address urban challenges and improve quality of life. So we are a smart city program that's looking at all kinds of public services and looking at ways that technology and data can deliver those public services in a better way. In terms of where we fit, you might be familiar with what Ireland looks like in terms of a map. You see it there on the left-hand side. Dublin being the capital, approximately 1.5 million people. We've created 4 councils within Dublin County to help with all the local public services. And you see there on the right-hand side is the makeup of the names of those 4 councils. The bit in the middle is Dublin City Council, the city centre itself. So basically, Smart Dublin is a coming together of those 4 councils to try and improve or identify new ways of working using technology and data. So open data is just one part of our overall program. And in terms of open data, what you see here is a screenshot of our open data portal, which we called Dublinked. And in terms of the communication, to highlight the value add of this portal, we put some simple language here, like where can you find information on noise levels in the city, or locations to lock your bike, learn about where you live, work and play using Dublin's open data. So we've approximately 550 data sets. That's increasing week by week. And what you see here, the little icons at the bottom of the slide gives you a sense of our taxonomy as to how we structure the underlying publication. So underneath arts and culture and heritage, there's a whole list of data sets that we publish. And we use a platform called CCAN to publish and cleanse as many data sets as we can. The box in orange there highlights or summarizes our approach to unlocking the many data sets across the 4 councils. You got to start somewhere in terms of all things open data. So we decided to go with a sector by sector publication approach. So what that means is we decided to focus on the high value data sets as identified by the EU. For example, mobility, anything to do with mobility, what we're finding is a hugely desired set of data sets. So that means we talk to the transport people within the 4 councils to see what data sets could we unlock and publish to our portal. So that's the way we've gone about our publication process. It's a sector by sector approach. So to summarize, well, what happens then within the publication process? The diagram here shows you that within each of the councils, and we've 4 councils in the Dublin area, they have their own respective open data portal. They publish that, and then the Dublin region, the portal that we administer as Smart Dublin, we harvest that data. It gets passed on to the national portal, which Rhoda spoke about, and then that gets passed on to the European portal. In terms of the effort and roles underpinning this process, you'll see there on the bottom left-hand side. So we mentioned, I think Rhoda mentioned it, we have the idea of open data liaison officers. So each public sector organization in Ireland has an open data liaison officer that works with the relevant sections in their organization to identify relevant data sets that are suitable for publication. So they work with many data coordinators within their organization. From the regional perspective, which is the group I work with, we have a regional data coordinator because there's a lot of things, a lot of common challenges that we have across the 4 councils. And then we've built tools, and I've included some links to these tools to help us make sure that the data is clean, it's kept up to date. And then, of course, we keep an eye on the success of our publication. So we have some KPI reports. And then what we're really striving to do here, because we're getting data sets in different formats from 4 councils, we really want to harmonize that data and compare apples to apples as much as possible. So this slide here talks about our KPI reports, and this is just one example, and it may be a little bit hard to read, and I've provided a link there on the top right-hand side, so you can go in there and have a look at these KPI reports at your own leisure. And the way it's structured is broken down by each council. So you have Dublin City Council is the top left, and then we've got the other 3. And what we're looking at here is quarter by quarter, what are the most popular data sets that the public, the market are looking at. And like I said, mobility seems to be a very topical data set or a domain that people really want to look at. But then I've highlighted just something happening in one of the councils in Fingal where trees, information around, I think it was the maintenance of trees around the county, all of a sudden was becoming a very popular data set that people were looking at. And the way we use this information is that then when we have a working group that meets every month, we talk about these trends, and it introduces a nice discussion as to, well, what is happening in Fingal and why isn't it happening in the other council? And it leads to some peer pressure as well, that should we be promoting a particular data set, or if a particular data set from one council is not published at all, could the other council, could that council publish it because one of the other councils has already published it? So it's a nice way to create that sense of peer pressure, that sense of competition amongst the 4 councils. Okay, so that's covering the publication process. Just to touch on a few projects that we've done, which again, back to the Lego infographic, is now trying to move up the value chain. So we might have published data, it's sorted and arranged in a particular way. Can we present that data in some sort of visually impactful way? So here's an example of a project that we're currently doing. where we're going to install sensors into the parking bays in one of the councils in Dunleary. There's some 40 sensors will go into these parking bays, and the role of the council will be to unlock this open data via APIs. So people with challenges in terms of moving around their neighborhood, they will have, probably on an app, some certainty as to whether the parking bay will be available for them or not. So our role for the councils will be to unlock that open data via APIs that any service could pick up and present to the user. On the visualization example, this project Hale and Harty was mentioned previously. And what this is doing is creating a repository where recreation activities, public facilities, health and well-being services, anything to do with sports and recreation are presented to the user. All the underlying data is made open via our portal, or maybe via the national portal, or some other organization has made the relevant data sets available. What the user can do is show me all the sports and recreational activities within 1 kilometer, within 2 kilometers, within 10 kilometers, etc., all with the view to trying to promote an active lifestyle for whoever wants to engage with these facilities. A similar project that unlocks relevant open data, in this example, it's cultural activities. This was done by a sister organization of ours, and again, the links to all these projects I've provided on the slide, so I'm sure the slides will be presented afterwards, but same concept. If the user wants to get creative, as it suggests there on the top right hand side, in the location, in their neighborhood, it'll show them the cultural activities that are available near you, hence the name of the project, Culture Near You. So a really nice, another example of bringing open data to life based on specific use case. Show me all the cultural activities near me. Okay, so we've touched on the publication process, giving you some examples of projects. I'll move on to the topic of innovation. And I think one of the challenges we get internally from the many people that process data within the councils is, well, what's the value of me putting in all this effort to sort the data, arrange the data, and publish it? What's the end game? Who's going to get value from all this effort? So we looked at some innovation processes to try and really engage with the market. And what you're seeing here is an innovation challenge we did back in 2021 to look at the topic of active travel. So we're basically saying to the market, there's a lot of active travel open data from us as well as other organizations in Ireland. Can you have a look at that data? Can you innovate, come up with new insights, new ideas, algorithms, apps, visualizations, whatever you think is really interesting, and show and tell and build a proof of concept and do a show and tell back to us as to how to encourage people to take up walking and cycling in this case. So the process involved many different organizations. It was part funded by Rhoda mentioned the Open Data Engagement Fund, which really helped to fund this project. We got 38 applications. We shortlisted 12 projects where we worked with them to co-design their solutions, and we had 3 prize winners. And that the first prize, the link is there to a visualization repository. It's called Where is the Crack? So crack means fun in Irish. And this was during lockdown. So the tool here presented to the user, showing them the cultural and sporting activities they could do within a 5-kilometer radius, and that the full story is also linked there in terms of the communications we did around this. The second innovation we did this year is around climate action. Very similar process, getting together the relevant, primarily public sector bodies that are in the business of unlocking open data. And the challenge here is, you know, how can we tackle climate action using open data, looking at energy, looking at mobility, looking at nature-based solutions, looking at resource management. And the first prize in this case went to a UCD group, an academic group, identifying locations of remote working hubs, so encouraging people to work remotely so they don't have to travel to work, and helping people identify the best remote working hub based on their location. So a really interesting way to stimulate innovation around open data. This last slide for me is one we're planning to do next year, which is going to look at air quality monitoring. So this video should launch, I hope. So the process here is that we worked with Google, and they had a car driving around Dublin, electric vehicle car, for about a year, capturing street level air quality data. There's some 50 million data points here gathered, and we're going to do a hackathon with, again, the market, industry, academia, et cetera, to try and understand what innovation could be gleaned from this particular data set. So we're going to publish this data set via a hackathon early next year. Okay, so that's me, Darius. Hopefully I've covered these points. It give you a feel for our publication process, some of the projects we worked on, and some of the innovation processes that really hope to add to show the real value that open data brings. Thank you.
Thank you very much for Alan Murphy, Smart Dublin Regional Manager. I noticed that there are questions coming in the text box, and also noticed that they are also being answered. So that's great. And now we will have a possibility to answer some more questions. So I will start. And if you have also a question you would like to ask, you can just raise your hand, and later I will give you a possibility to do so. I would like to start by asking, to what extent does the success of data opening depend on, well, on the chosen organizational structure and its executors? And have you changed that structure during time just in order to make sure it works better? That is my question. I don't know, maybe Marian, you could answer. Or maybe some other colleagues from Ireland in that case.
Sorry, Darius, Marian had to leave the meeting. She's another meeting to go to. Sorry, could you just repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, to what extent the success opening the data depends on the chosen structure, organizational structure, and have you changed the structure or noticed that it needs changing on the way?
Okay, the quality of opening the data, I suppose, is down to the local organization or the public body that's releasing the data. At a central level, the open data unit doesn't assess the data, the quality of the data. So, and so it really comes down to, at an organization level, how that organization is implementing the open data strategy, how they are organized within themselves. So you would have organizations like the CSO, which is obviously a data organization. That's what they do. It's they are highly qualified and very well structured to manage data. And likewise, Dublin City and the Smart Dublin County Councils. But in the smaller organisations is where you meet the difficulty, either in the skills that are available to within the organisation, or the structure, if you like, to organise the data and release that data. There wouldn't be the same resources available within smaller organisations, so that becomes the difficulty. At the department level, The open data unit is a small unit. There's just 3 of us, myself, Helena and Richard, and we really don't have an oversight role on where our role is really an oversight and an outreach and engagement role, but we wouldn't have the resources to assess the quality of the data being, that's down to an organization level. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Also, one very specific question about health sector. What kind of open data various hospitals in Ireland provides, and is there any challenges facing GDPR? So perhaps not sure who's the most expert on this topic, but maybe Mr. Murphy could answer this with your field as well.
No, health is not a remit of the councils. We have a national health agency that looks after all things health. Maybe Rhoda could comment on that.
Yeah, I think health is one of the areas where we see a real challenge in the release of data, mainly because an awful lot of their data is very sensitive data, it's personal data, but it's also very siloed data in Ireland. So within hospitals, within various branches of the health sector, there's a real challenge in bringing this data together. And that's a recognised challenge, and there are a number of initiatives in train to bring this data, to make it more interoperable, to make the sharing of this data easier across the sector. In terms of anonymisation and the sensitive data then, and obviously the challenges, huge challenges in terms of GDPR, in making sure this data can be, disaggregated back down to an individual. But maybe Declan, you might like to talk on the data anonymisation. That's more the CSO's or CSO, I should say.
Yeah, sure. During my presentation, I mentioned the legislation that the Central Statistics Office has to acquire information. The Statistics Act 1993, that does give us the power to request information from other government departments, but it also, in the same stroke, requires us to make sure we don't disseminate anything that would be disclosive. But just to even provide more clarity, it gives us the means to request information of most government bodies. It doesn't give for all, so there is a couple of exceptions, some maybe to do with criminal records and health records. For us to be able to obtain health records, we would need to get the permission from the Minister for Health to provide that information over to the Central Statistics Office for a specific purpose. So there is caveats around that, but health data does come into the Central Statistics Office, but like that, it is incredibly sensitive information and it can only be used for specific purposes. On the Central Statistics Office's PX Stat portal, we do have some health statistics available in an open data format, and some of those have been provided directly to us from the Department of Health, and they would be data that the Department of Health would be required to provide to Eurostat under European legislation. So it would, but the data would be at a very aggregate level. It wouldn't identify individuals, and in this particular instance, the team of the health data would be around the number of professions in the health sector, the number of beds available. It wouldn't be talking in terms of individual illnesses or anything like that. So again, I suppose just touching on the statistical disclosure controls, which is again something that we have to take very seriously in the Central Statistics Office, but not also to standing with things like GDPR as well, is also wanting to ensure that steps are took to mitigate against anything disclosive been released. There is no one golden rule on how to make a table anonymised. the one golden rule really in a way is to make sure that when you leave the table to be disseminated, that no one individual can be identified. And there's different ways of doing it. Some people would take more cautious steps than others. And what we'd have to try and do in the Central Statistics Office is to balance between protecting the individual, that their data isn't released, and not watering down the data to the point that it can't be used for anything of statistical importance. And that's something that we grapple with all the time. We have our rules in place as well, kind of house rules and things that we would apply, minimum criteria, minimum thresholds in given cells and things like that we keep an eye out for. But yeah, we would never let any open data go out if it had any information in it that would be disclosive.
Thank you very much. And also a similar question, but considering transportation and infrastructure, there's also a question about what kind of specific data, open data, is being opened in Ireland, and mainly asking about various ports, airports, also posts, or for example, roads, railroads, and so on. So maybe, Rhoda, I would like to ask you then once again to answer this one.
There's a large volume of transport data. Our transport data information. There's a huge amount on the portal, but it's mainly road data. So it's mainly information on road use and traffic and that sort of thing, supplied through counters and that. And I think Alan would be able to talk on how that is being used. But as yet, we don't have very much data on the portal on the likes of airports or the railway network, and that's something, particularly on the railways. These are organisations that are, I suppose, coming up to speed on what their requirements are and their obligations are under the Open Data Directive. But as yet, it's mainly road usage and transport information, which is highly utilised, I have to say. Parking facilities, bicycle lanes and that sort of thing is highly utilised information from the Open Data portal. But Alan, you might want to come in on that.
Yeah. So like I said, anything to do with mobility seems to be the hottest topic for us in terms of our open data sets. So the councils are tasked to promote active travel as much as possible. So when we're building new cycling infrastructure, that's a really valuable data set to be picked up by all kinds of services to then encourage people to choose cycling as an active travel mode of transport. In Ireland, we have a national transport authority that also would publish open data like real-time passenger information about the real-time availability of buses, for example. They also work on behalf of the rail operators, so they would publish again to your app when the next train is coming. So that kind of information is for sure being updated by those agencies to the national portal, and again is consumed by all kinds of apps locally. Yeah.
Thank you. And also,
if I could just come in on that as well, it's just literally while we were talking, I just jumped into our website to see what data we had on it. And on transport statistics, we have a range of statistics on that available. Even within the transport sector, things like the impact of COVID-19 on travel behaviour, maritime statistics, rail statistics, road fatalities, road traffic volumes, licensing statistics on vehicles. So there's a wealth of information there, and it's just actually listening to some of these questions, it only really draws your attention to particular components of what is available in open data, and that when you start looking, you start finding that there's a wealth of information available.
Thank you. And also in the beginning, in the first presentation, I believe, it was mentioned that open data also helps to improve legislation process, decision making, policy in general. Could you give us some examples how that helped to create policies, better policies, or to have better decisions?
Well, within our own department and I suppose across a number of departments, there is a body called IGES. So they are statisticians who work within departments to gather information, gather statistics, again, to inform policy. So they would use open data. They would use obviously data that's not open as well. They would draw from a broad range of information to feed into policy decision making. So it's very much, the tendency now is very much for evidence-based policy making. And again, we implemented a data sharing act a number of years ago, and this allows public bodies to share sensitive data, not only open data, through formalized agreements. So it's again to cover all public bodies in relation to GDPR, that they're in compliance with GDPR and have agreements in place to allow them to share this data. But that's an ongoing initiative across the public, across the civil service and the public sector as well. And a lot of these statisticians, I suppose, are coming from, they're probably coming from CSO, yourselves. But I don't know, maybe Alan, you might have a specific example of where within the Smart Dublin, where policy for a particular policy initiative.
Yeah, a real controversial topic is taking away of road space or pedestrianizing a street, and this is where data and different kinds of data points are critical to act as evidence versus perception as to the impact of closing off a street to traffic, for example. So the kind of data points that we would gather for that kind of decision are things like footfall counters, vehicle counters, but then also trying to understand economic spend at a hyper-local level before and after. And, you can read this in the public domain, 99 times out of 100, when you pedestrianize a street, the footfall increases and the economic spend increases for local businesses. So for what Dublin is trying to do is move towards a more people-friendly city centre. So we're going to have more of these conversations to remove cars from the streets, and having these data points is critical for those consultations.
Thank you very much. This is one more topic then which we have in common. Roads becoming tightened is also very crucial and very commonly heard question here in Vilnius, in capital at least of Lithuania. Thank you very much for your answers. Now we will move on to our, I see one more hand was risen by Inga Maslodytė-Šukevič. You have a question, as I assume.
Yes, thank you a lot. I have a question for the clan. And how do you protect personal data and data which has some commercial or other confidentiality? How do you make the risk assessment, and which method mostly do you use to ensure the confidentiality? Of course, you now put some answers that you use the value of 5, like some minimal cells, but do you have the same value for example, for the special categories of the personal data, or do you have another thresholds? I would like to know more deeply in this risk assessment and ensuring confidentiality process. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Inga. I suppose there is no hard and fast rule. There is no one kind of rule to ensure that data prescribes to statistical control, that nothing disclosive is released. It does have to be looked on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, the more sensitive the information is, and in any way that it could be interpreted and that would allow for an individual to be identified, you'd have to increase the thresholds to ensure that that can't happen. So really, in the end, you have to just ensure that the data going out isn't disclosive, and it sometimes that may require looking at the data on a case-by-case basis. Like I was talking there about like a basic population count across numerous cells, that you'd apply a minimum threshold potentially of 5. If people thought that was enough, they could always increase the threshold. But you have to remember too that if you do suppress one cell in a row or a column, and you have the total of that cell or column available, you also have to suppress the next highest cell up to make sure that that original suppressed cell can't be recreated. And then maybe if you're looking at something like business statistics, you could have different rules, that you could have a minimum of 3 companies could be counted for in a cell. But within that, you could have rules that for whatever the cell is prescribing to, if it's turnover or something like that, that you would ensure that one of the 3 companies doesn't account for 80% of the turnover, or that 2 companies don't account for 90% of the turnover. Again, these are general rules and wouldn't apply to all business statistics. So just another example of rules that could be applied, and it'd be really down to the subject expert over the data to understand the data and to make the best call they can. And it's not that they can, but that they have to ensure that the data is not disclosive, but to do it in a way, I suppose, that they can still give out as much detail as they can, so that others can use the information and get statistical use from it. I hope that answers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question, because I was just about to announce that we can start a roundtable discussion. And since our topic is confidential and personal data protection and smart solutions and opening the data, so this question was a perfect introduction for that. And also knowing that Inga Musovita-Shukevich is also joining our discussion team. She represents, of course, the Department of Statistics in Lithuania. I would like to ask, in general, a question for the colleagues in Ireland. How much GDPR was a problem or an issue opening the data? To what extent you heard that some organizations can't do that fast, or can't open some data just because they don't know how to apply GDPR? So maybe once again.
Okay. I think GDPR initially, people were very, there was an awful lot of training done in Ireland and across the public service on GDPR and all our commitments under GDPR. So people were very scared in one way of GDPR when talking to them about open data. But I think we have engaged over the last number of years to, one, encourage people, obviously where there is no GDPR issue, where it's non-personal data, release as much data as possible, but also to provide training to people in how to anonymize data, how to assess data, and make sure, you know, if you're aggregating up, that it is properly anonymized, to prevent disaggregation, similar to what Declan was speaking about. But what you will find is it depends very much on the organization, on the level of skills of the person you were talking to, how comfortable they are with data, whether they're you know, a data expert and understands the complications and the implications of GDPR, or whether it's somebody more from the corporate side who would take a more guarded approach, because their obviously focus is to ensure that they comply with all the rules to the letter of the law. But it has been used as a defence, I suppose, for people who may not want to release data and as an excuse not to release data, and that's a challenge, and that's something we have had to counteract and challenge ourselves. So, for instance, our company's registration office, when they saw the initial text for the implementing act under the Open Data Directive, was highly concerned that some of the information that was being proposed to be released, you know, people's names and addresses and things like that, even though they may be company owners and that sort of thing. And again, they would have a lot of concerns over some of the information that would be released, and they would quote GDPR as an obstacle to that. But again, I think it comes back to education, it comes back to training people, it comes back to reassurance, and just keeping the conversation open and giving people the skills and the knowledge really to address the issues under GDPR. So Declan or Alan, you might like to come in on that.
Yeah, no, like GDPR, it's something that we've all have to work with, and it's there for very good reasons. From the point of view of the Central Statistics Office, the legislation that we had in place allows us to acquire information from other government departments generally. I was given a few exemptions earlier, and that's still the case when the data has been used for statistical purposes. But with GDPR, it enforces us to prescribe to the best practices, that any data requests that we would be trying to acquire under the Statistics Act, that we're also doing it in compliance with the GDPR, in that we are only asking for data that is necessary and is proportionate. So, you know, we'd have to go through a data necessity and proportionality assessments, and then other steps that we'd have to take to be compliant with the GDPR would be a data privacy impact assessment, and we'd work very closely with our own internal data office to make sure that we'll have compliance with that. We'd be transparent in what we do, but again, it keeps coming back to, while we have the means to acquire the information, and we have to do it in respect now the context of the GDPR, we can't disseminate anything that would be disclosive, because then we're in breach of all the legislation. So that's something that we put a huge emphasis on, just to make sure, and because not even because of legislation, which is always a good reason, but public trust. It'll take years to build up public trust when you're dealing with people's data and people's sensitive data, but it might only take a moment to lose that trust if you let something go out that will be disclosive, and we're acutely aware of that as well.
Yes, Mr. Schkert, maybe also you could answer, is there a way how we can make sure that we all are on the same page when it comes to GDPR, in order not to get answers that, well, some organization is not able to open the data just because they are afraid of GDPR, but actually they're just maybe a little bit lazy to do so?
From the context, the Central Statistics Office, as part of the legislation for us to acquire information, it also empowers our Director General or Secretary General, the head of the organisation, to use that data then as sees fit effectively, but for statistical purposes. So when we would acquire information like that under the Statistics Act, if we feel that there's a statistical benefit to making that data open sourced, we'd have the power to do that. But again, making sure that it's compliant with statistical disclosure controls. While we have it kind of set out quite clearly like that with our legislation, I suppose it's the same principles that would apply to other organisations as well. If they take data and even accidentally misuse it, they'll have a tough time ever getting data again, I suppose, from a data source, and not to mention the fallout they may have with the people covered in that data. We also have, we would have a data protection commission in Ireland as well, and people refer to them for advice if there is any uncertainty. But I think as long as there's a clear purpose and the safeguards in place and the steps are followed within GDPR, it should, in the vast majority of cases, I think, the environment should facilitate the making available of open data.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Šukevič, maybe some of these examples would also work in Lithuania in order to make sure that everybody is on the same page with GDPR.
Yeah, it's a big issue exactly to make everything that will be according to the GDPR or other legal act to protect the data. But I guess we have a lot of different methods and choices to do that. Especially, we need to understand what kind of data we need to protect, and we need to choose the best way how to do that. And if there's some organization just said that, oh, no, we don't want to publish the data, if they maybe don't understand how they can do and open such kind of data. And of course, we need to just to collaborate and communicate with other end users and data owners. What kind of method should be used? How we can protect? We need to try to trust this confidentiality methods, and together I think we can open the data and share exactly what we have in our organization.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, maybe you could share some smart solutions which would help to open the data more easily.
Yeah, I mean, on the topic of GDPR, it really helps us because we're just not in the business of publishing any personal data. The 550 data sets we have in our portal, there's no personal data involved. So the internal conversation we have with data owners when there might be resistance to publish the data, you know, we can use GDPR to say, well, actually, there's no personal data here. There's absolutely no reason that you shouldn't publish this data. So then what happens once we get over that first hurdle, then what happens is they have concerns that their data is not accurate enough, it's not perfect. And it's probably never going to be perfect. So we have to have these conversations to reassure them that one, it's probably good enough to publish, and we can work with feedback from the market to make it better. So GDPR really helps us in that our focus is actually in non-personal data, and it's more of educating our data owners that it's okay that if there's some imperfections in the data you're publishing, because we get feedback that'll help us to make it better.
But were there any issues, according to, well, GDPR, well, in your country, in Ireland, or it was just, well, people were afraid to breach the GDPR, or there was any, well, major breached moments while opening the data?
I'll take that. No, I think it was a general fear or maybe misunderstanding of GDPR to a certain level, in that, you know, if you release any data, you could be implicating yourself under GDPR. But there's been no data breaches as a result of releasing data as open data. That we're aware of anyway, that I'm aware of. I don't know if Alan or Declan might know, but there hasn't been in an open data context any breach of GDPR. And I think, as Alan and Declan have said, it really is about reassuring people and bringing them along with that, and giving them the knowledge and the tools to understand that releasing data as open data is compliant with GDPR. You know, you work with GDPR rather than allow GDPR to work against you. So that's, you know, and again, it comes back to education and engaging with people. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your answers. And we actually running out of time. And I wanted to ask you, since you have lots of questions and very practical questions and very specific questions, is it possible to send them and you could answer them a bit later?
Yes, I'm sure we can. Yeah, do please. Yeah.
Yes,
I'm speaking for Declan and Alan there, so I'm taking you're okay. Yeah.
Hopefully your colleagues are also okay with that. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to conclude that, sure, this event showed already that sharing some experience, it's very useful to gain more experience for yourself and maybe to avoid some issues on the right. And this is only a first event where I'm happy to see all of you. This event was brought to you by Office of the Government of the Republic of Lithuania and the project Strengthening Capacities in Results-Oriented Management. The second event, where I also kindly invite you to be and to attend, we also virtually, and it is scheduled for next month. We'll provide some more information quite soon, so hopefully to see you there as well. As I already mentioned, we will have some more questions sent and answered. And as for today, I'm really happy that we had this chance to meet and to discuss, and I will wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Thank you.